Greetings and salutations, folks. My name is Nick, and this is your April update. Now, today I'd like to talk a little bit about movie trailers. The main reason why is because of the Avengers Endgame. Don't worry, I'm not going to go into any details. I'm going to try to avoid any particular spoilers. Actually, I'm going to try to avoid any spoilers at all. It's more because in the trailer there's a character who is in peril in the trailer. It's not very clear as to how said character is going to survive. Then, the second Avengers Endgame trailer comes out, and you see the character alive and well. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess we're not going to make that a thing. And then the third trailer kind of expanded upon that. And I think that's kind of what I want to talk about, is not necessarily spoilers, but surprises. And I say surprise because largely a movie trailer in general, or movie trailer, game trailer, all function as a means of spoiling. It has to. You can't have a trailer spoil nothing. If you had a trailer spoil nothing, you wouldn't be able to see any footage. Heck, certain movies, you wouldn't even be able to see full casts, considering some of the surprises that might happen in any given movie. So you have to spoil something. But it's more towards the idea of a surprise. The most notorious of that being the Terminator 2 trailer that kind of gave away the surprise that Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to be the good guy that time around, as opposed to having played the villain in Terminator 1. That said, like, you can critique it for that, but if you couldn't show any scenes of Arnold Schwarzenegger playing as the good guy in any of the trailers for Terminator 2, like, what kind of trailer could you show? Like, you'd really have to cut out, like, a lot of dialogue, because he's in, like, nearly all the scenes, so it's like, you pretty much base the entire movie on, like, the first 15 to 20 minutes of plot, and then you just have extremely random, out-of-context clips for the rest of the trailer, which is fine. Though in, like, for Terminator 2, I would imagine it's fine. For Terminator Genesis, like, that movie gave away a little bit too much. And with Avengers Endgame, like, it doesn't need to have been a surprise that said character survives, because it's like, if said character, I almost gave it away, but it's only limited to gender. If said character doesn't survive, like, why did they even bring that character on the ride after all? So it's expected that they're going to somehow get out of said peril. But at the same time, like, why are they kind of building it up in the trailer? Now, I noticed that there are a few ways in which movie companies have been trying to avoid not necessarily giving away spoilers, but also keeping surprises inside the movie trailer, while also kind of giving you a pretty wide coverage of the film. And like, you can see this in both the trailer for the movie Us and for The Ninth Gate. If you haven't heard of The Ninth Gate, I don't necessarily blame you. It's like a late 90s Johnny Depp movie where he's like a detective investigating old Satanist pages. But if you watch if you watch the trailer for it, it shows you the ending. And I'm not talking about, like, it gives like a scene from the ending. I'm saying, like, it shows you the last few seconds of the movie, which out of context is a little bit odd, but at the same time, if you come in here into the movie, and the movie kind of starts off kind of grounded in reality, and then you see these kind of weird supernatural stuffs happening in the background, unexplained. And if you know of said footage, then you be more aware of where the movie's going, as opposed to Us, which does show you scenes from later in the film, but everything's out of context. Everything's cut up real fast, so you don't really. It's harder to kind of place it. So, another method that I noticed movie companies using is trying to misinform audiences. Avengers: Infinity War is famous for misinforming its audience through special effect changes. Although one of my favorite examples of misinformation would be for the film The Nice Guys, in which in the trailer for The Nice Guys, it shows like a scene of Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. They're driving along, and there's a giant bee in the backseat of their car. And then it cuts to a clip of a car crashing through a house while they're screaming. So you're like, okay, so this happens and then that happens. But actuality, the car crashing through the house is a different car with different people entirely, happening in a different part of the movie. So the movie trailer actively misinforms you while also kind of creating a secondary joke out of it, which is not being used. I don't know if I would like that to a point, because eventually this leads to issues like with Rogue One or with Justice League, where you have larger amounts of footage that are not used in the actual movie. So then you're like, okay, so what happened to those scenes? And like, I know with Rogue One, there's the scene where, in the trailer, where, what's her name? Main character girl? That's her name. She's in the like Imperial officer uniform, pilot uniform, and she's turning around as the lights are coming on, and that was basically like found off the cutting room floor. Like they weren't even planning to use it, but like somebody cutting the trailer together thought it would look cool, so they're like, okay, let's toss it in the marketing. So at some point, I would say, like, a movie trailer should still be reflective of what's going on in the movie. So that strategy, I would agree with only to a point. Only if it's clear that, like with Infinity War, the misinformation is very clear. They did it to keep people guessing, to keep audiences unaware of where the plot is going to be. Because sometimes you watch a movie trailer and you can say like, okay, so here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end. I don't need to see the movie. Kurt Russell was in a movie where the trailer pretty much showed like, okay, him and his wife are driving down the... Oh, by the way, I forget the name of the movie right now, but it's... yeah. Him and his wife are driving, car breaks down. Truckers kidnap wife. He confronts truckers, and then they go into big car chase. Like, all of this is in the trailer, and it's shown in that clear order. Which, is it the company who made the trailer's fault? Because, I mean, that movie has a very, very clear escalation of conflict. Like, it's very simple, so it's not really like it's got very complex path to take. Or is it their fault for just not kind of figuring out a way to advertise it better without necessarily giving the story? Either way, with any luck, we could hopefully get some trailers that try to avoid giving away too many potential surprises and are more reflective of what we're actually going to be watching. Also, there's this one thing that movie trailers are doing these days that I really kind of don't like anymore. And that's when in order to try to make things more exciting, the movie trailer will cut to black over and over and over again, constantly cutting to black. And then it's like the movie isn't going to be displayed like that. The movie isn't going to be displayed like that. Why are you trying to make everyone go into epileptic shock with your flickering lights? Just show like, if you don't want to show the whole scene, just give like a brief moment of it, but don't like cut every like couple. It's like those tweets or posts people make where they have like the hand clap emote between every single word, and it's like, ah, God, don't. So I've been playing Elder Scrolls Blades lately, and it's interesting playing this pared down version of the Elder Scrolls experience. And by pared down, there are certain things that are going to be missing from the overall experience, including, but not limited to, open world exploration, long range combat. At this moment, there are no bow and arrows. Magic cannot be used at a distance. Actually, I've kind of stepped too far. Let's take a back up for a second and talk about the game itself. So the game you play is one of the former Blades who is on the run from the government. And they are also investigating their rundown hometown, which ghosts might be involved. But in order to do that, they go off, they do quests that happen to be on like linear paths in like dungeons, forests, caves, what have you. Then they take their material, you take your materials that you collect from the dungeons and quests, take them back to your hometown and build it back up, put it back on its feet, put it back on the map, so to speak. Combat in the exploration in the game is very, very, very linear. Environments kind of have a little bit of a maze function going to it, but most of the time you're just kind of following a path. And then combat, you you walk nearby an enemy, they walk nearby you, and the two of you just kind of stand staring at each other, locked into combat. So that's what I mean by, like, there's no long-range combat, because you can't fight until you become locked onto an enemy, and then you can't get locked onto an enemy until they are in front of you. Which also means there's no stealth, because there isn't a stealth function at this time? I mean, I suppose they could probably put one in. I mean, like, long-range combat would probably have to change how combat is done, but stealth, all you really need is a button. But that also raises another thing that gets pared down, and that is the leveling system. The Elder Scrolls is known for having this kind of deeper leveling system in regards to you do things, you get better at them. The more you swing long swords, the better you are at long swords. The more you use bows, the better you are at bows. Now, the mobile game just throws that out and just goes with a traditional kill things to get more experience model, which means that there isn't really any kind of, like, that type of customization is a little bit gone. The advantage there is you could pretty much just use any weapon, but at the same time is you're just kind of slowly grinding away to get experience more than you are planning to try to use any weapon type. The game does suffer from a kind of, I don't want to call it copycat or laziness, similar to Fallout 76, in that Fallout 76 is basically just Fallout 4 multiplayer. Where like Elder Scrolls Blades, like you can clearly see the Skyrim assets that they pulled out and they plucked in there. So it's kind of hard to tell like how much new things they developed for the game, as much as they just took the old things and then they called it something new. At the very least, they're not charging $60 for it, but the game also has all those free-to-play mechanics that kind of become problematic. Involving like paying money for jewels which can be used to speed up the opening of treasure chests, purchasing other treasure chests which are just loot boxes. So it has all of the traditional free-to-play mechanics you might see in other free-to-play games that already exist. Would I necessarily recommend it to anybody? At this point, probably not, unless you're like really... Actually, hold on. If you're really into like Skyrim, I would probably just say play more Skyrim. I don't... Like, you'd have to be really into, like, the Elder Scrolls as a whole to be like, yeah, or maybe just into, you don't mind just trying out things just to see how they are, instead of expecting to be entertained, because you probably won't be entertained, that is. Right. Some new things that came out this month. Mortal Kombat 11 just came out. I am awful at it. Nintendo Labo, the VR edition, came out. I picked it up. I don't think I really can talk about it just yet, as much as I can say it feels as though more time is going to be spent assembling these cardboard boxes than actually playing the game related to them. I would imagine by the time I'm done, like, assembling the cardboard boxes that Nintendo has supplied, that's like about 5 to 6 hours of just assembling time. All through some of like, I want to call the instructions patronizing, but at the same time, I realize this is a game for children. So they had to write the instructions in such a fashion that children would understand them. But at the same time, like, I wish, like, the game had, like, a version of the instructions for adults. That way I wouldn't have to go to a new instruction and it'll be like, hey, here's this new sheet. You need to crease the cardboard on this sheet 5 times. Crease. And it's in video form, so you're constantly fast forwarding. You can't just kind of like tap to skip ahead. Like, it's interesting, but I don't think I could really tell you if it's bad or good until much later. I've got to spend a little bit more time with that. We've also had the trailer for The Boys come out, which, considering Seth Rogen is involved, it's not too surprising. I didn't realize that it was originally based on a comic by Garth Ennis before I watched the trailer, but now that I know that, considering Seth's work on the Preacher series, apparently there's a quote from Garth that says that The Boys is meant to out-Preacher Preacher. So based on my own early assessment of the trailer before I knew this, like, it looked as though The Boys is meant to become more, to hit that kind of ridiculous pace that Preacher hit faster. Which is always good, because Preacher was excellent. It just took a little while to get going. So hopefully The Boys does not have that issue. There's also been trailers for Star Wars, the movie, Star Wars, the video game, Star Wars, the lunchbox. Everything's looking good. The Star Wars movie, that's just a teaser trailer. I'm not the kind of guy who comments on like 30 minute of teaser trailer where everything is very ambiguous. As for the game, though, it's interesting that it's being published as a single player only, no micro transaction game. It feels like EA is trying to be like, but hey guys, we're good. We're okay. We're not that evil all the time. Back on Bethesda, though, they've announced that Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 will not be at E3 this year, which I would say is good. The more time they spend developing the game, the better, especially after Fallout 76. Bethesda's games tend to be frequently buggy, so any rushed product is always going to be buggier than the last. And 76 was pretty rushed. So I would say take your time. Don't release anything. Don't even release a game next year. Hold off until like at least 2021. Maybe even 2022 if you really have to. But definitely nothing next year. So the Assassin's Creed 3 remastered version came out, and they delisted the original version, which I suppose it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, like, Ubisoft is no longer going, like, I would imagine Ubisoft has no plans to maintain that content, so it's only a matter of time for like later versions of Windows or later systems outpace the current version, and it does not work. That said, yeah, so like trying to keep it on the store to say like, hey, this is for sale, but it's probably not going to work on your system is a little bit of an awkward statement. So makes sense to me. So Borderlands 3 is apparently going to be exclusive to the Epic Store for a little while. Not permanently, just a little while, and people have been kind of leaving negative review scores all over Borderlands 1 and 2 game pages, which I find is a little bit odd, because it's like saying, hey, I'm a big fan of your work, I love it, but because you're going with this other publishing company, I'm just going to hate all over your work, which I find is kind of odd. Like, if you want to protest a company using a different platform to sell their games, don't buy their games on that platform, and then they'll be like, hey, we were exclusive to the Epic Store and it didn't sell, so maybe we should not be exclusive to the Epic Store next time. And then they'll learn from that. Trying to bully or harass companies into doing what you want tends to not work and also makes you look bad. Also, on another note, does Steam really need all that love? Like, they're a huge success. Is it really that bad that there's competition? Like, that's what the market is for, to have competition. So, like, the fact that Epic Store exists isn't necessarily a bad thing, though I think a lot of the hate the Epic Store gets is because it built itself on the foundation of Fortnite, rather than, say, on a foundation of, like, Half-Life and Half-Life 2 and Portal. Although, hopefully, if the Epic Store does become a thing, and if people consistently use the Epic Store years from now, they will still make games, as opposed to Valve. So Microsoft is finally putting out the all-digital Xbox One they announced from the beginning. And I find it kind of interesting because with the 360, I tend to be more of like the physical media person. But with the Xbox One and the PS4, I started to get more into the digital side of things. And if there's anything I've noticed about the digital side of things is, one, it's convenient, but two, it kind of prevents, like, let's say you have a system, your friend has a system, you buy a game, they buy a different game, and you can kind of lend games between each other. Digital sales prevent that kind of, like, lending library, that kind of, like, shareability of games amongst friends. Um, and I found that's been kind of a limiting thing for digital releases, because I'd buy a game and I'd play the game, and then I'd be like, okay, I don't have anybody to talk to about said game because they did not buy it. If I had a physical copy, I could be like, oh, hey, play the game. But I don't. It's digital, and it's stuck on my system. So, that said, it's not too surprising, and I guess with a 1 terabyte hard drive, that makes it pretty convenient to hold a bunch of stuff. I don't know. The only complaint that I might have about it is that it can't play Blu-rays anymore. But I guess this kind of ideology is more towards like the kind of person who is not necessarily buying any physical media. And I think in this day and age, we are getting closer to, or at the very least, the actual usage of that kind of system is increasing. Especially given a lower price point. Apparently it's going to be $250 versus the $300 for the Xbox One S. So it's going to be on the lower end for the internet-only Xbox One. As for whether the Xbox 2... the numbering system has gone off the rails. The PS5. Whether the PS5's generation will be without media, I would say it's still far too early to say no physical media whatsoever. But it'll be interesting to see how well this version sells. And then there's like 3 bits of news in regards to classic retro games. There's the Sega Mini. They've announced it's going to have 40 games on it. They've already announced 20 of those games. The first 10 were a little bit of a... I wouldn't say it's like a bad list, but at the same time, it's like most of those have already been in other collections, more specifically the Sega Classics collection. But as they've kind of continued on, they're with the next 10, bringing it up to 20, there are some interesting games on there. For me, it would be like games like Castlevania Bloodlines, which I've never owned a copy of. The Contra game, I've never played Mickey's Castle Illusion. So, as long as it's able to kind of have both kind of like the bigger Sega games that we already know of, that are already available in other collections, but also have these other third-party games that would definitely make it an interesting item to own. At the very least, at these 20 games, it is a better collection than the PlayStation Mini, though that's not saying much. There's also the Castlevania collection that's coming out from Konami, which is interesting because I was expecting it to have a little bit more on it, but the Castlevania collection is very, very specifically retro, to the point in which it does not include Rondo of Blood or Symphony of the Night. It's just like Castlevania's 1 through 4, the Game Boy games, Bloodlines, and also it's all being ported by M2, the team that's making the Sega Mini. So it's kind of interesting that they've got this. There's a game that's going to be in 2 different collections, being ported by the same company. The Capcom Home Arcade, which is this like huge, like 2 joystick setup on one like giant platform, and it's supposed to only have like 16 games. Now, on one hand, I would like to get it because it has Alien vs. Predator on it, and that game is fantastic. But on the other hand, I don't want to spend $260 on 16 old arcade games, 15 of which I'm not particularly interested in. So, probably not. Still, it looks like an interesting collector piece, so if you're really into like Capcom's old arcade setup, then I suppose it would make more sense for you than it does for me. As for what's going on the channel, we've still got Assassin's Creed Odyssey going forever. I think I'm nearing the 70-hour mark in that game. So when I started playing it, I started playing it as a test for Project Stream back in late 2018, because Google was doing like the Google test that eventually became the groundwork for Google Stradia. I don't know why they choose that, but apparently Google Play was already taken. Um, so I started playing that, hoping to finish that by the time the Google test had finished. Clearly, that was too ambitious of a goal, because that only took 3 months for the test, and I'm on like half a year playing this game. I expect to be finished with it soon. I'm not entirely sure whether I want to jump into the DLC. It's an option, but I don't know. What Remains of Edith Finch is going to be pushed back because of copyright claim issues. Apparently, there's a copyright claim that popped up for the usage of a song from the Nutcracker, which is a little bit odd. It's been disputed, but I don't expect that to be dealt with for like another good 25 or so days from now. So in the meantime, Star Wars Rebellion is going on. I don't expect that to take too long. And then hopefully after that, Doom 2016. If you have any requests, if there's any games that you thought were pretty cool, just type in the comments below. I just finished the Da Vinci Code, so it's clear that I am not prejudiced to bad games, or at the very least taking bad games seriously enough to play through the whole thing. Just not necessarily bad games for bad games' sake. So if you got any recommendations, let me know. And either way, see you in May.